On a hill overlooking the city stood a mansion, a fortress of beauty and intimidation. But behind its tall walls and shiny gates, chaos was king. Inside lived a billionaire, a man whose fortune was as legendary as his temper. He had everything money could buy, from gold-plated furniture to priceless art. But he possessed one thing no one could tame: his explosive anger. For years, the mansion had a revolving door of maids. Some were experienced, others trained at the finest hotels. But none could last a week without feeling utterly exhausted, frustrated, or terrified. Each new maid arrived full of hope, believing she could handle the job. But they quickly learned it wasn't the cleaning, cooking, or organizing that was the problem. It was the billionaire's unpredictable moods, his constant demands, and his impossible standards that made life unbearable. He demanded perfection in everything. The pillows had to be arranged just so, the silverware aligned with military precision. If even one tiny detail was out of place, he would erupt, screaming at anyone in his path. Some maids cried, others quit in the dead of night, and a few simply vanished without a word. The mansion became infamous, a place no servant could conquer. Staff would whisper stories of the billionaire's rage. They spoke of maids scolded for spilling a drop of milk or forgetting to polish a single vase. Some even fainted from sheer terror when he stormed into a room. Even the butler, a 10-year veteran, admitted that keeping the house in order was like walking a tightrope. The gardens were stunning but filled with hidden chores. The kitchens sparkled but needed constant vigilance. Every room had its own set of secret rules. It wasn't a house. It was a puzzle no one could solve. The billionaire seemed to enjoy testing his staff, pushing them to their breaking point. He'd ask for impossible things, like arranging hundreds of flowers in an exact, intricate pattern, or cleaning areas no one would ever see. The mansion was a palace, but it felt more like a battlefield. The air was thick with tension. The sound of his footsteps was enough to send a wave of panic through the halls. The staff tiptoed everywhere, always bracing for the next command, fearing one small mistake would trigger an explosion. No one dared to smile or relax. The constant stress made them feel small and powerless. At night, they'd gather in the servants' quarters, whispering about how impossible the job was, wondering if anyone could ever succeed. Their stories created a legend that spread beyond the mansion's walls. People said that anyone who could manage that house would be a hero. But so far, the mansion remained untamable. Amidst the chaos, the mansion itself seemed alive, with its long corridors, echoing halls, and grand staircases. It had its own personality, and the billionaire's anger was the force that controlled it all. No amount of training could prepare someone for the challenges within. Some tried reasoning with him. Others tried ignoring him, but nothing worked. Each failure just added another name to the long list of maids who had left, defeated and exhausted. Surviving a single day was considered an achievement. Everyone believed it was impossible. The mansion was a test of patience, courage, and endurance that no one could pass. And yet, a new hope was on the horizon. Someone small, clever, and brave was about to arrive. Someone who would see the mansion and the billionaire, not with fear, but with intelligence and patience. For the first time in years, something unexpected was about to walk through those doors, a little girl who would change everything. On a bright morning, a little girl arrived at the mansion, her small suitcase in hand and her eyes wide with curiosity. She was unlike anyone who had entered the house before. While other maids were nervous or trembling, she walked confidently through the grand doors, taking in the towering walls and glittering chandeliers as if she had always belonged there. The staff stared, whispering, "She's just a child. How could she possibly survive here?" The butler shook his head, unsure whether to smile or warn her. But there was something different about her, a spark in her eyes that saw everything clearly. She didn't rush to clean. Instead, she paused to observe, watching the staff, listening to the mansion's sounds. She saw how he stormed into rooms, how certain tasks made him impatient, and how small mistakes triggered his anger. Unlike the maids before her, she didn't shrink or panic. She quietly mapped out the house in her mind, noticing details everyone else overlooked: a crooked vase, a squeaky door, a stack of unread letters. She understood that the mansion was a puzzle, and the billionaire's anger was part of the rules. Instead of fixing everything at once, she started with small, clever actions. She began by tending to the pets, feeding them, and calming their anxiety. Then, she quietly tidied small areas, arranging things in a way that seemed natural, not forced. No one told her to do this, but she instinctively understood that even the smallest changes could prevent frustration later. The staff watched in amazement as problems that had existed for weeks seemed to disappear without any chaos. She didn't announce herself or demand attention. She simply observed, acted, and learned. Her patience and intelligence slowly started to create a ripple of order in the mansion. The billionaire noticed her, though he didn't understand it at first. His fury was so constant that he rarely paid attention to small gestures, but he felt it differently with her. Something about the little girl's calmness, her quiet focus, and the way she anticipated his needs without speaking, intrigued him. He couldn't explain why, but he found himself pausing, watching her move from room to room, fixing things he had long thought impossible to manage. Unlike the maids who had angered him before, she never looked scared or desperate, and that alone confused him. He had spent years believing fear kept people in line, but here was someone who worked without it. Slowly, she began to interact with the staff, earning their trust without demanding it. She spoke to them kindly, helped them when they were struggling, and suggested small improvements without ever ordering anyone around. For the first time, the maids and butlers began to feel hope, realizing that the impossible task of managing the mansion could be possible if approached with patience and intelligence. They had never seen someone so small, yet so observant and capable. She reminded them that fear was not the only way to survive, and that cleverness, empathy, and calm could achieve what yelling never had. Days turned into weeks, and the mansion began to change. The hallways were tidier, the kitchens ran smoother, and even the billionaire seemed less tense. The little girl's actions were never loud, but their effect was undeniable. The staff started to rely on her quietly, learning from her patience. The billionaire, though still furious at times, couldn't deny that something extraordinary was happening. This little girl, whom everyone had underestimated, was proving that even the most unmanageable mansion could be tamed. And so, the impossible began to feel possible. Not through force or fear, but through courage, cleverness, and quiet determination. The mansion, once a place of chaos, began to show signs of harmony. Her arrival was not just a small change, but the beginning of something truly remarkably, a journey that would challenge the billionaire, inspire the staff, and transform the mansion forever. The little girl's presence in the mansion was no longer a quiet curiosity. It had started to create ripples of change that everyone noticed. The staff began to realize that she didn't just clean or organize, she observed, understood, and acted in ways that no adult had ever managed. She seemed to know what needed to be done before anyone else even realized there was a problem. The billionaire, despite his fury, couldn't stop himself from watching her carefully, wondering how a child could accomplish things that had defeated every trained maid before. Her small hands were busy, yet her mind worked faster than anyone's, solving problems, predicting moods, and fixing tiny mistakes that would normally trigger the billionaire's wrath. It wasn't long before the first real test arrived. A shipment of rare, fragile, and valuable items was delivered to the mansion, complicated to organize. The previous maids would have panicked, arranging things incorrectly or accidentally breaking something, which would have sent the billionaire into a rage. But the little girl approached it calmly. She studied each item, examined the fragile boxes, and planned the storage with care. She guided the staff quietly, explaining in simple words where each piece should go and how to handle it, not through authority, but through her intelligence and clear understanding. She even noticed one package that was slightly damaged and moved it safely aside, preventing what could have been a disaster. The billionaire walked in at the worst possible moment, fully expecting chaos. Instead, he found the shipment perfectly arranged, his eyebrows raising in surprise. The staff started seeing her differently. They whispered to each other, "She's not just lucky, she's brilliant." They noticed how she remembered small details about the billionaire's moods, knowing exactly what would make him angry or pleased. She had an uncanny ability to calm tense situations before they even escalated. If the billionaire was frustrated with a missing item, she would appear quietly with a solution. If a room was messy, she would organize it before he even noticed. Every small action she took built a sense of trust, though no one dared to call it that yet. The mansion, once a place of fear, began to breathe a little easier. Her intelligence was matched by her kindness, and that was what set her apart. She never scolded the staff for their mistakes, nor did she act superior. She quietly helped, corrected, and encouraged, teaching them that patience could achieve far more than fear. Slowly, the staff began to believe in her methods, adopting her careful, thoughtful approach. Even the butler, who had been skeptical for years, couldn't help but admire her calm confidence and insight. She reminded everyone that the impossible could be handled with observation and understanding rather than panic and anger. One evening, the billionaire himself decided to test her, though he didn't admit it. He created a situation designed to overwhelm her, leaving multiple urgent tasks at once, some impossible to finish on time, and waited to see how she would react. Most children would have cried or run away, but she calmly assessed the situation, prioritized the tasks, and delegated small jobs to the staff. She moved swiftly, yet carefully, solving problem after problem, anticipating the billionaire's reactions and staying one step ahead. When he walked through the halls expecting to find chaos, he found order instead, his fury melting into disbelief. He had never seen anyone, adult or child, handle the mansion with such poise, intelligence, and efficiency. By now, the mansion was slowly transforming under her influence, and in grand or dramatic ways, but in subtle, meaningful ones. The rooms were cleaner, the staff calmer, and even the billionaire seemed to show small signs of respect, though he would never admit it out loud. He still had his temper, but he was beginning to notice that fear no longer ruled the house. This small, clever, and courageous girl could do what he had thought impossible. She had shown everyone that order could come from patience and strategy, not yelling or punishment. Her reputation quietly spread among the staff, becoming almost legendary. The impossible mansion was slowly becoming manageable, all because a child saw it differently than anyone else. She treated the billionaire not as a monster, but as a human being with rules and patterns that could be understood. She treated the staff not as inferiors, but as partners, and she treated every problem not as a mountain, but as a puzzle. Something remarkable was happening in the mansion. And everyone felt it, the suspense, the hope, and the quiet excitement that maybe, just maybe, this little girl could achieve what no adult ever had. As the days went on, the billionaire began to realize that this child was no ordinary visitor. She was a force that no one had anticipated. She was the first person who had ever seen the mansion for what it truly was, and the first person who might actually succeed in taming it. That morning, the mansion was buzzing with an unusual tension. The billionaire had invited an important guest, someone whose presence demanded absolute perfection. Every single detail mattered, from the polished silverware to the precise alignment of the rugs. The staff, already on edge from years of failing to please him, scrambled around in a state of panic, whispering to each other in fear. Everyone expected chaos. They were sure that once again the mansion would descend into disarray, and the billionaire's anger would erupt like a thunderstorm. But a little girl, calm as ever, observed the scene quietly. Her mind was already racing, piecing together solutions. She didn't panic, she didn't shout, and she didn't allow fear to touch her. Instead, she looked at the problems one by one, understanding their priority, and started plotting a path through the chaos that no adult could even imagine. The kitchens were overflowing with dishes, the laundry was half done, and the hallways were cluttered with last-minute deliveries. The billionaire's fury was simmering just beneath the surface, his footsteps echoing through the mansion like thunder. Each step was a warning, a reminder of the disaster that awaited anyone who made a mistake. But the little girl moved with quiet authority. She asked small favors from the staff with gentle words, redirecting their panic into calm, focused action. She cleaned, organized, and arranged with such precision that the mansion began to feel like it was breathing again, slowly returning to order under her small, capable hands. At one point, the billionaire stormed into the main hall, furious at what he thought was a mess. He expected arguments, excuses, and failure. Instead, he found the little girl calmly placing the final touches on the decorations, adjusting a rug here, polishing a vase there. Her eyes met his for a brief moment, fearless and confident, and something in him froze. He had never seen a child act with such awareness, anticipating every need before it was even voiced. He opened his mouth to scold, but no words came out. His fury was met with something he couldn't control or dismiss. The little girl then faced her final challenge, a pile of delicate invitations that had been misplaced and a tray of fragile desserts ready for the guest. One wrong move could ruin everything, and the billionaire had seen this kind of disaster before. But she approached the task slowly, methodically. She checked every envelope, carried the desserts with careful precision, and coordinated the staff to deliver everything exactly where it needed to go. Not one item was damaged, not one mistake was made. The mansion, which had been a whirlwind of panic just minutes before, now looked more perfect than it had ever been. The staff could hardly believe it, whispering in awe as they watched her work. They had never seen such composure in a child, nor such intelligence and foresight. She had done what no adult could do, turning what seemed like total disaster into flawless execution. The billionaire, who had witnessed countless failures, finally understood that this was no ordinary child. Her actions hadn't just prevented chaos, they had solved every problem before it could even arise. She had tamed the impossible, and in doing so, she had changed the very atmosphere of the mansion. When the guest arrived, everything was perfect. The rooms gleamed, the food was flawless, and the staff moved with a calm efficiency. The billionaire, though still stern, was silent in disbelief. The little girl's quiet determination had turned fear into order, chaos into calm, and disappointment into awe. The mansion, which had always seemed untamable, had been conquered, not by strength, authority, or money, but by intelligence, patience, and courage. The impossible had been made possible by someone no one had expected, someone small. Someone underestimated, but someone truly extraordinary. As the day ended, the mansion was quiet once more, but it felt different now. The billionaire watched the little girl as she moved around, helping the staff with small tasks, her calm presence radiating confidence and control. He had spent years believing that anger and fear ruled his house, but she had proven him wrong. She had shown that even the smallest person, with the right mind and heart, could achieve what no adult ever had. And in that moment, the mansion, once a symbol of chaos and fury, began to feel like a place of possibility, hope, and respect. All because a little girl had dared to do the impossible. After the day's chaos had passed, the mansion felt different. It wasn't just cleaner or more organized. It felt lighter, calmer, and somehow more alive. A feeling he couldn't name stirred inside him. She moved through the halls, helping the staff with small tasks, smiling softly, speaking gently. Everything she touched seemed to improve. The staff, who once worked in fear, now moved with confidence. Inspired by her example, they learned to approach their work with patience and intelligence, not terror. Word of her extraordinary abilities spread slowly but surely through the mansion. Maids and butlers spoke of her in hushed, admiring tones, sharing stories of her courage and cleverness in situations that used to cause panic. She had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the impossible could be managed if you approached it the right way. The billionaire, though still stern and serious, started to see her differently. She was no longer just a child to be ignored or tested, but someone who had earned his respect without ever asking for it. Her intelligence and bravery had left a mark on him that he couldn't erase. The little girl's influence went beyond simple tasks. She began to change the very culture of the mansion. His kingdom of fury had been transformed into a place of quiet efficiency and respect, all because of a child who dared to see it differently. One evening, as the sun set, the billionaire called the staff together, something he rarely did. Everyone braced for a scolding, but instead he spoke with a rare calmness. The little girl's story became a legend within the household. A reminder that intelligence, patience, and heart could conquer even the most impossible challenges. She had transformed lives, teaching everyone lessons that would last a lifetime. And so, the girl who had arrived timidly with a small suitcase became the hero of the mansion. The one who tamed the furious billionaire's home not with strength or fear, but with wisdom, courage, and kindness. The impossible had been achieved, and in the hearts of all who lived there, a new understanding took root. No matter how big the challenge, there is always a way to succeed if you approach it with calm, patience, and courage. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content like this.